One. Hello, Poetry Salon cast listeners who are listening to the Poetry Salon, and you are also watching it now that we're available on YouTube. My name is Tresha Faye Haefner. I'm your host, and today I'm going to be interviewing the poet Tim Seibles. Before I say hi to Tim officially, I do want to read his shortened bio. Tim Seibles is the author of 7 collections of poetry, including Body Moves, 1988, Hurdy-Gurdy, 1992, Hammerlock, 1999, Buffalo Head Solos, 2004, Fast Animal, 2012, which won the Theater Rocky Memorial Poetry Prize, received the PEN Oakland Josephine Miles Award, and was nominated for a 2012 National Book Award and on Turn Around the Sun 2017. His latest work of poetry, Voodoo Libretto, will be published by Etruscan Press in 2022. His poems have been published in the Indiana Review, Black Renaissance Noir, Cortland Review, Plowshares, Massachusetts Review, Beloit Poetry Journal, and numerous other literary journals and anthologies, including Best American Poetry. Seibles lives and teaches at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. Welcome, Tim. Are you in Old Dominion in Norfolk right now?
No, no, I retired some time ago. That might be a bio that a slightly defunct bio.
Slightly defunct. Okay, he was teaching at
I
Old
was,
Dominion.
I was,
Um, are you still in Norfolk though?
I am, I am.
Okay, great. Well, you're my neighbor to the north now because I now live in North Carolina and
Oh, okay.
been up to Virginia a couple of times. I think Roanoke and yeah, places like that because I have a friend who was in grad school up there and I used to go visit her and beautiful countryside, very hot, very hot.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So the way that I know you is that your legend really precedes you. As I'm sure you know, we have plenty of writers in America and all around the world today, and um, the one way to get me to really feel overwhelmed and full of despair is I'll walk into a library and realize I will never get to read all the books that are being put out.
It's impossible. It's too many
It
books. Too many.
Yeah, it just is. But I've been hearing the name Tim Seibles in the poetry world, for years now. And when Robbie Nestor booked you for Words with You, um, which we did just last night, you and Cornelius Eady, I said, well, finally, this is going to be, the focus I need to actually get to know Tim Seibles' work. And so I've been listening to it, listened to you read last night, and I've been, looking at your TED Talk and some of your other interviews today. And, really, I definitely understand why you have the reputation you do. Your work is not just the writing part of it, the written part, but the way you perform it is so engaging and musical, and really just a treat to listen to. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, of course. I love talking about poems, and this is great.
Yeah, so let's start by hearing one of your poems. As I said last night, you read with Cornelius Eady, who's another one that I'm just kind of getting to know. And I remember you said something about how you've been reading him for a long time, and he
Yes.
he got the spotlight on him and said, "Oh, look at Tim. Did you notice how he called me an old man without calling me an old man?"
Yeah, but what's
Uh,
funny is I'm older than Cornelius.
is it
I
true?
just, yeah, I just ran. I knew his poems before he knew mine, but I'm older than he is. Yeah, probably by 2, 3 years. Yeah,
Oh, that's
that's
fun.
why I thought
I
it was so funny. He says, "See how Tim's calling me old man?" I'm like, nah, bro, I'm not calling you an old man.
hmm Well, old souls maybe,
Yeah,
but
maybe, but no, no, I'm older than he is.
well, that's really interesting. I can't tell age. I'm not a good judge of age, which is why I married a man 16 years older than I am because I didn't know he wasn't my age. He's very energetic though. He's very presents very young. But
Well, yeah. I mean, you never know how people are going to age anyway. You don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's hear the poem that you wrote for Cornelius. I thought that was so interesting. Um, and I'd like to know more about it. But let's just hear the poem, which I
Okay.
believe is called Either Way, and then
Okay.
we can discuss.
So this is either way. I wrote for Cornelius because both of us have in various ways been affected by music,
Mhm.
importantly in our lives. Of course, I think everyone is affected importantly by music, but this is for him because he he has his first book was I was gonna um, gosh, now I'm gonna blank on it, but it's a great book. The Dance Craze.
Hmm.
That's part of the title. Anyway, but what's cool about this book, if you ever see it, is the cover is a pair of sneakers on fire. I just love it. I love that cover. Yeah. Anyway, so this is a poem called Either Way for Cornelius Eady. Excuse me. Days when something grazes my shoulder. Sunlight, sidewalk, the shadows sharp. The sky holds a cold, unbreakable blue that says, why look up here? Doesn't seem like so far back. Couldn't dance, scared of girls. I heard Smokey sing, going to a go-go, with that soft crystal in his voice. Pictures, music caught in my head somewhere. I'm sick of memory. My younger self still inside, wanting a way out of this, who I am now, this busy all the time, this itch middle of my back. But who was that kid in the basement, all alone with the miracles moving his feet? The orange couch covered in plastic, black marks on the beige linoleum. Something about solitude, if you can stand it, makes you feel wise. The voice in your head talking its way somewhere, pressing you to believe what it says. And though you can't remember when, you grow into it or you don't. Each thought breaks into the next, keeps on, turns back. Either way, you don't ever really understand. Just as you get used to the snow shingling your hair, your idols, one by one, begin to leave. Their old tunes fill the coffee shops and gently bob your head. What is it that your life forgot to mention? Hum a few bars, you say.
All right. Tim Seibles reading a poem Either Way for Cornelius Eady. So, yeah, I'm always worried that I'm going to embarrass myself on these interviews. Well, now I've gotten that out of the way, so I can just relax. So let me ask you a little bit about your sort of origin story with poetry, and how did you get started with it, and how did you come to get to know Cornelius's work, and just say a little about that.
Sure. Well, the long story really begins with my mother. Probably when I was a very small boy, she would read stories and sometimes nursery rhymes to my brother and I. And I just loved being what happened when she read things. I just loved that. that words could just suddenly be alive in a certain kind of way. Now, if you had asked me that when I was a little kid, I wouldn't have said that. I would have just said, I just like it, but now I realize it was it was like a kind of magic, really. You have a book in your hand, someone starts reading aloud, and this world appears. And my mom was a really good reader. She was also an English teacher. Um,
Mhm.
so she was a good reader, and she would do different voices for different characters, and so I just found it just utterly compelling. I mean, obviously more so than my brother did. He did not become a writer, but I loved it. And then later on, when I went to college, my big dreams were all about being a football player, that did not work out. But somehow, and I don't remember why or how, somebody, either a professor or a fellow student, somebody said, "Hey, there's going to be this class in creative writing. You might like that." And I just can't remember why someone would say that to me or who did. But I stumbled into a class taught by Michael Ryan, who's now recently retired from the University of California at Irvine.
Mhm.
Um, and he was a great, passionate teacher who also was a poet. And I don't know, I was looking for something that would allow me to live a non-traditional life, or I should say, an adult life that wasn't all about restraint and dignity. I don't know. My parents were both wonderful people, very restrained and dignified people. They were. But I was always a little bit of a crazy kid, I guess. And I just wanted to be able to live a life, or at least have some aspect of my life that was just really alive and kind of crazed. And Ryan, he'd read poems and he would be so intense about them. And sometimes his face would turn red. And he was reading a poem that was especially emotional. And one time he finished a poem and he slammed his fist on the desk and just walked out of the room. And I don't know. I was sold. I thought, if words can do that, I want to do words like that. I want to make words do those things. The other thing about his class, and this would have been true of classes after that, taught by different writers and different poets, they would read different poems to us by all these different authors. And there was so much going on in the language. I thought, man, I've got to be able to do some of what those guys and women are doing. I've got to be able to do that. I don't know. I just felt like I had to have that be in my life. Not unlike perhaps when you hear an instrument like a violin or a guitar or a piano and you say, "Oh, I want to play. I want to play. I want to make that music." It's the same thing. So that's where it started for me. And then, you get hooked and you just yeah, I could not stop. So I just kept writing and writing and writing. Didn't mean I was writing well. That's not what I mean. But I was writing a lot and I love to write, you know. So that's where it
That's,
started. Yeah.
I love hearing you say that. And I think that is what poetry or lots of creative practices can do is let you have that unrestrained, surprising, more free life. And yet, at the same time, like I won't speak to you, but I know for me, a lot of my time is spent pretty safe indoors with a pen and paper. Like,
Mhm.
worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to have some real emotional embarrassment that I can keep to myself on the page, or I'm going to get a paper cut, or,
But
the
your
pen
mind,
runs out of ink.
but your mind is a pretty dangerous place. People I think often imagine danger being something you find out in the world. But once you start asking certain questions of yourself, or certain questions about the institutions that have
Hmm.
defined the society, suddenly, at least for me, suddenly you feel like you've been somehow misled that, all these things that were held up to you as the way things have to be, it's just not true. And then you find yourself at odds with the world that you've been born into. And that is a very uncomfortable place. Some people end up drugging themselves to death because of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some people become revolutionaries in the positive sense. Like I think artists in various ways are revolutionaries. They're asking people to think in ways that they have not thought before, or to be sensitized in a way that the culture generally, people realizing that this led you. I think that art is generally uh,
Oh dear.
feeling
Uh, Tim, you're frozen. Can you hear me?
frozen.
Hold on. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine.
Okay. I
Now,
will
now I see you. I see you now.
we'll proceed. Hold on. I'm gonna get in on my phone. I don't know if that was my bad connection, your bad connection,
I don't
but we'll at least for me, I can get myself a little backup here.
know. Okay.
Joining.
Everything over here seems to be working okay. I don't know. I haven't unplugged anything. It should be okay. My Wi-Fi is pretty strong here, so.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, we've got a storm coming in, but that's nothing new here. So, I'm just gonna blame it on gremlins. Uh, there's gremlins always causing problems, and we're just gonna get a little backup here. Um, but let's go back from where where we were talking about revolutionaries. No, I definitely agree with you, and I'm thinking of Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, James Joyce. And I think that's where that idea maybe first came to me is that you yeah, you belong to all these institutions, you think this is the way the world is, and then you come into some conflict or you interact with people for whom the world is not working so well. And then you gotta ask everything. You gotta interrogate everything. Certainly that is kind of a threat to systems, isn't it?
Absolutely. Once you start asking questions and the answers don't come back right, everything is at risk. Your
Hmm.
religious beliefs, your beliefs about race, gender, sexuality, capitalism, everything. It's
Hmm.
all on the line once you start asking questions. And that's why I say the mind is not a safe place, nor should it be, to be quite honest. If your mind is a safe place, you're probably damn near dead.
Yeah. I mean, you could also look at it the other way, which is maybe the mind is the only safe place and everything else is kind of distracting us, taking us away from that. Uh I'm curious how this relates to music. I mean, I think I can maybe predict where we would go with that. But say a little bit about how music has influenced this thinking and about Cornelius Edes, the poem for Cornelius Edes specifically.
Oh, well, there are a couple of things going on with the poem with Cornelius. One is we were talking earlier that we both, of course, black men growing up in the similar era, the 60s, 70s, and so on, 50s, 60s, and 70s, but we really were coming of age as teenagers in the late 60s. And and I don't know, through some conversations and also listening to his poems. And
Mm,
oh yes, the name of that book that I was trying to name, Victims of the Latest Dance Craze.
nice.
Anyway, that's the one with the sneaks burning. Anyway, but it was just clear that from his work, music meant a lot, and I've always loved music. Um, and I don't know, I just couldn't imagine writing a poem. I also have great love and affection for him as an artist and as a human being. He's a great human being, I think. But I wanted to write something. I actually stumbled into that poem. I was working on that poem. When I began it, I had no dedicatee. I was just writing. But then as I started getting into it and Smokey Robinson came up and the idea of music in coffee shops that of our old icons and stuff, I thought, this makes me think of Cornelius. And so that's why I dedicated the poem to him. But music, of course, I think as I was trying to say before, um, most people on earth have an important relationship with music.
Yeah.
Most people on earth, it helps us dance, it helps us relax. Things that we feel are often first made concrete in a song by someone or in an instrumental piece. We say, I love that piece because I know that feeling. I know what's being said by that violin. I understand what that piano is doing with that chord. And so I think everyone, of course, has a pretty powerful relationship with music. Um, my most important, if I have a most important musical influence, would be Jimi Hendrix. Um,
Hmm.
in part because I love the guitar, the voice of the guitar, but also because he embodied a revolution in sound.
Yeah.
He just had a different idea about what you could do with sound. And I so respect anybody who can step out of the boxes that we've been invited to live inside. If you can step out and create a whole new or open, I should say, open a whole new territory for people, I admire that. I certainly aspire to do some of that in my own work. Whether or not one succeeds, that's another question. But I aspire to be something or to embody something in my work that is not sanctioned, has not been sanctioned. I certainly aspire to that. But I don't know. I love music. One of the things I love about music, instrumental music, in particular, but also vocal music, is that we live with feelings all the time that are never articulated. And music, at least for now in this culture, is this kind of current that's always around us that is trying to speak of things felt that are rarely spoken about.
Hmm.
Now, in another millennium, or in a different time and place, maybe poetry would be that everyone would know poetry. Everyone would have a poet that they love or several poets that they love.
Yeah.
But we live in a culture and in a time on earth when it's music that most everyone pays attention to. And in this country, especially, but I think in many places, poetry is still this energy that floats on the fringes of the society, and certain people are reading it, but many people couldn't name a poet if you asked them.
Right.
And which I think, of course, is tragic, but I'm sure opera singers feel similarly, and I know jazz musicians do, because there's a whole world of music of jazz that most people don't know anything about.
Yeah, my sister actually is a an opera singer, not by profession, but that's
Uh,
that's her area of study. And believe me, yes, nobody knows what opera
yeah,
is.
you just don't know
Very
much about it.
few. Yeah, yeah. And yet the miracle is somehow it keeps surviving
It
even
persists.
yeah, even without the commercial demand for it maybe. And I think that's changing a lot with poetry, slam poetry,
Oh yeah.
things like that. It's
Oh, that
making it a
certainly has
lot more
helped.
property. Yeah.
Yeah, it's helped a lot that people don't have to find it in the academy, quote unquote. It's helped a lot.
Yeah, no, I'm really curious about your experiences. I mean, this is a tension I was navigating and I still have to navigate sometimes as you're a teacher, you're a professor, you are in some ways connected to some institution of higher learning, and yet you want to be, rebellious and talking. The last year that I taught high school, I realized I had chosen all these books that were like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and all these books that just were really torpedoing systems, and the system is dehumanizing, and the system will prevent you from. And we were learning about the romantic heroes and the Byronic heroes and the 60s and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I can't be a teacher in a high school anymore. I've just spent my whole last year talking about how the system is wrong. And I'm the system. Like then you're driving down the freeway on your way to LA listening to Pink Floyd's Tear Down the Wall and going, I am the wall.
But
So
but in that case, you were not the wall. You were in the system, but you were trying to break it down. I mean, that's the thing.
that's the
Yeah.
paradox, isn't it?
Yeah, I
It's
mean that's
like,
the thing. I think that it's impossible to not find yourself in some way related to the institutions that control the culture. I mean, if you,
mm-hmm.
I mean, I have, you may know the poet Baron Wormser. I don't know if you know of him, but he lived in the Maine woods for 20 years off the grid. You can do that. You
Wow.
can just disappear into the wilderness for 20 years. And that's one way to reject the system, but it's a solitary rejection. But what I
Yeah.
think is important about teaching and the books we offer to our students and the things we say in class is that we are saying, in effect, to them, consider these other possibilities. Think of your life in these terms, perhaps. And so I'd like to imagine that as teachers, we might do for a student what Michael Ryan, for example, did for me, which said, hey, you can work in this world this way, but what about thinking about working it in this way? And
Yeah.
so I think you're really offering, I think if you're a good teacher, like I aspired to be a good professor. I taught high school also for a decade in Texas. You're trying to make the students be more than the society is inviting them to be. You're trying to get
Yeah.
them to not just be good shoppers. You're trying to get them not to be just people who think about money and marriage and family, and that's your life. You get a job, you get married, you have kids. That's your life. That's what matters. And it's like, no, there are other things that we might consider that can change the way we feel life or feel about life. And so I think as a teacher, you're in a pretty remarkable position. And so insofar as you are a legitimate quote unquote figure, but you can use your platform to say, we need to interrogate this, perhaps
Yeah.
transform the society in this way. So yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with being a teacher or a professor. It depends on what you do with it.
No,
That's me.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
just, to be clear, like my favorite people are teachers. I'm not lampooning teachers at all,
Oh, I didn't
but
take it
I
that way.
just I just find it's just always a paradox. And I could be really talking out of my own behind here because I read this thing I think in a book by Joseph Campbell years ago, and he's talking about how in the Japanese language, there's two different kinds of freedom, like two different words for it. And one is the freedom of the mountain, and the other is the freedom of the city. And the freedom of the mountain means you're free because there's no one around to bother you, and you can do whatever you want, but you can't really have a community there. You can only do the things that you can do by yourself on the mountain. But then there's the freedom of the city, which means you have the freedom to do all the things that people do when they're in cities, go to the movies and go to clubs and make music. And you can only do those things when you have other people. And so this is like the constant kind of tension we're always negotiating is like, how can I be
Yeah,
myself in
yeah,
community? How do I make sure I get to be authentic and also useful to other people? And that's a
yeah,
lot of what art is like, how can I
yeah.
be authentic, but also say something that's going to mean something to other people.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, one of the reasons. As I said, I became a teenager in the 60s, so I was definitely affected by the idea that art could change the society.
Yeah.
Black music certainly had a political edge, and certainly the hippies and Hendrix and that whole other ilk, that was another kind of political force in the society. And it wasn't about, well, it could change the way you voted, of course, but it was really about the way you thought about yourself or how you imagined yourself in relation to the larger society. And
Yeah.
that to me is what's important. I don't know how long it will take for the efforts our efforts as artists to really affect visible change in the society. I don't know. I have no idea. I was a young dude dreaming about poetry changing the world. The world seems pretty damn similar to what it was when I started being a poet, 50 years ago.
Yep.
But certainly I am not the same. Being an artist and engaging other artists has changed me. And so
Yep.
you'd like to think that maybe your work can do that for someone else. And you'd like to think there's a quiet passing of this kind of energy to each other. So that's what we hope for. And then maybe someday, what did William Stafford say? I am the one to hum until the world can sing. And that's it, right?
Oh,
That's it. I am the
I
one
like
to
that.
hum. Yeah, the idea of
Yeah.
humming until the world can sing. He was a wonderful poet. I don't know if you know William Stafford's poems or not, but he was a wonderful, soulful man. Good.
Yeah. I've got his book, You Must Revise Your Life. And
I don't have
his
that book.
other, oh man, it's another one of those like I got it, I read a few things,
Mhm.
I keep quoting it, I haven't finished it because just too much good stuff, and I don't always have time to finish the things, but I've read a lot of Stafford's poems and
Yeah, he's
poetry, and
great.
he's
Yeah, he's great. I
really
was lucky
influenced
enough to
other
see him
people.
read. I got to see him read when I was an undergraduate. I got to see him read. He was a great
He's
reader
from
too.
he's is he from around this area, or am I thinking of Carl Sandburg?
I
I'm
think
thinking of Carl Sandburg, I think.
Yeah, Sandberg, I think, might have been an East Coaster. I think
Yeah.
my impression is that Stafford was Northwest.
Yeah,
That's my
that
feeling, that he was more of a wilderness guy, a
wilderness
city
poet.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Auden said something that it's definitely brought a little bit more clarity and peace to me as an artist. Because yeah, when I was younger and reading all these books that said things about society, I was like, well, wait a minute. They said that 100 years ago, and society hasn't changed. It seems to have gotten even worse. Like the Romantic poets telling us not to get too involved with machinery and technology, and then like clearly we didn't listen.
Yeah, well,
Um,
it's hard to change anything if the larger majority of human beings, and especially the wealthy, are not reading
yeah,
poetry. They're not, the
yeah.
industrialists weren't reading poetry. They don't
No,
understand.
that's true. But Auden has this book, The Prolific and the Devourer, very slim book, and he says something like, I'm pretty sure it's Auden anyways. But he says like, people who work with their hands doing physical labor, like they're working with their body, and their job is to change the physical world, like farm and bring food to table. And then he says there's the people whose job it is to work with other people, and that's like teachers and lawyers and so forth, and politicians, and their job is to manipulate other people, basically. And then he says the artists, their job is to manipulate their own fantasies. The artist and the mystic, their job is to manipulate their own fantasies. And I've been thinking about that, and I'm like, all right, sure, maybe we're not going to change all of society, but we can manipulate our own fantasies, and maybe that does something. Like maybe
Well,
that helps
I'm not
somewhere.
sure. I'm not sure I completely agree
You don't have
with
to.
that
You don't
assessment,
have to.
but because what happened, because art is necessarily about a relationship between the artist and the person who's viewing or listening to their work. It's not all
Yeah,
about your head. I mean, of course, everything begins in your head, but that's true of all the ideas, whether it's democracy or Christianity or Islam. I mean, it all started in someone's head.
yeah,
But I don't think that art is all about being solitary and strange in your own mind. I do think it's about realizing a certain vision you have, but then you offer that vision to other people.
right.
I'm absolutely indebted to people like Pablo Neruda, Anne Sexton, Gwendolyn Brooks, I, Gil Scott Heron, Hendrix, Santana. I mean, Bach. Those people, at least in my mind, have totally turned lights on in my head and heart that could not have otherwise been turned on. And so I do think art is about relationships and it is about changing other people. You can call it manipulation, I guess. That seems like a kind of a cold word. I'd like to think that art in its best moment enlivens other people and makes them see what they didn't see before or feel more deeply, perhaps, about their
Yeah.
individual lives. So I don't think it's a solipsistic endeavor. I really don't.
Well, I don't want to misquote or misrepresent what Auden was saying because
Um,
obviously he put it in a book.
well, that's what I mean. That's what I was going to say. That's a strange thing to say if it's all about your own fantasy. I'm like, it's not. You're offering it to me it's a shareable fantasy.
Yes, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
shareable fantasy. I do
Yeah.
really like that. I do like that.
Yeah, like
I,
Lewis Carroll, totally mad, but I love Lewis Carroll's work. He's
yes.
completely insane, but it's totally mind-blowing. It takes rides you right into another world, another universe. I love that about art. Dr. Seuss, the same thing.
Hmm.
Totally mad.
You can look at it as you're transforming your fantasy, your mind, your spirit, and then like you're able to create this thing, a poem, a song, a play, what have you, and then help other people then transform what's going on in their own heads, heart, spirit, body.
You hope.
We're sharing it. We're sharing it
Yeah.
across culture. Um, I think that's a good segue into your next poem because that one is definitely very conscious of what's going on socially. So, do you have that one ready for us?
I do. And I would say about this poem is it's rooted in, I'm just trying to, in some way, articulate what it feels like to be in America right now with a kind of whelming fascism and open racism, open sexism, open xenophobia, a clear embrace of insane opulence in spite of all the needs of people who have nothing. It's just such a weird thing. And the whole movement of the red cap, the MAGAs, that whole thing of embracing, you know, an ideology that by and large completely ignores their needs. That's what's really weird because it's primarily, as you know, people who have very little who love this scary monster.
Yeah.
Anyway, not saying anything else. I'm not here to just rant like a maniac, but I kind of am. Anyway, so it's a poem called In the Open, and its epigraph is Hey Siri. And what's funny about I should say this before I read it. When I was working on this poem, I had my phone near me.
Hmm.
And so last night, I mean, it happened while I was working on it, but it also happened last night when I read the epigraph and I said, "Hey Siri," and you could hear it. I don't think anyone else
Siri
could.
turned on, right?
She turned on and said, "Uh-huh." And then when I opened the poem, Siri said, "Well, I have this information for you," and started to go. I had to turn it off. It was great last night. It was really strange, but I guess no one heard it. I thought people could hear it, but maybe I was the only one who could hear it. But yeah. So anyway, in the open, most people still seem okay, but already some drag one leg and drool, but this place has never really made sense. So who can be shocked when someone else breaks down? Since November, it's easier to tell who, who voted for whom. It's like they're always hungry. In the supermarket, long smiles and high fives. Suicide has become common, though disappearing at the hands of persons unknown is also no surprise. Hard to tell what's real from what's on HBO. Hey Siri, are more Americans baring their teeth? Fear the walking dead, she says. Every so often you see blue uniforms. I still have some faith in the police, though it really does look like they're part of the spread. Anyway, it's out in the open now. The contagion moves freely, filling stadiums with a kind of glee. For a lot of us, nausea is just a daily thing now, and gangs of citizens have started chasing and biting, and pretty quickly the bitten begin to sound like the people they once had feared. And though they still look like the neighbors we remember, still stomp the bleachers and howl, French fries in hand, ketchup leaking from their mouths. You know that sometime soon it's going to be you they need to eat.
Phew. Oh my goodness. So glad you were reading that one. I ask, what's that poem about? I think it's I say that it feels like it's clear to me what it's referencing. And I find it very interesting in my own work. Whenever I want to talk about politics or this current situation, I just say something like since November, rather than saying since this person and naming them and saying he's in
Right.
office, I just say since
Yeah,
November. And I
yeah,
think we
yeah,
all know
yeah.
what that means.
Yes,
Uh,
I think
yeah,
so. It's really that is just shorthand now for exactly where we are. Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot in there that I think is it's questioning. I love that this kind of ends in this feeling of like, well, I like the police, but I don't know. They seem part of the spread. And our neighbors, there's people we used to think of as our neighbors. Uh, and the ketchup, that I think I only caught that on this rehearing of it. Like that ketchup is now being compared to like blood and vampire blood specifically. What it puts me in mind of, and maybe this has nothing to do with your poem, but we just watched the movie Sinners. Have you seen
Yes,
it?
I've seen it. Yeah.
I mean, it's so engaging and it's vampires, but kind of vampirism is a metaphor for colonialism
Sure.
and coming in, sucking the life out of things, taking all the energy from one group of people and using it to feed yourself. And so like that French fry blood metaphor was really putting me in mind of the vampires.
Yeah, I was hoping
Yeah.
for some connection between blood and the ketchup. If someone saw vampires, that's great because if you know about The Walking Dead or Fear the Walking Dead, any of those series, well, blood they're drawn to blood. I mean,
Mhm.
that's what they do. If you cut yourself and you're near one of those Walking Dead, they will to the best of their ability, sprint right towards you. If they're
Mhm.
within range of it, they will immediately come to the blood. And so I was hoping for a reference to that. I was thinking more of the Walking Dead than of vampires,
Oh
but
yeah.
vampires are also the undead. They're both the undead, right? So it's fine reference to me.
Yeah, I am really curious. When you write a political poem, this is something that comes up everyone's writing political poems, whether we want to or not, I think,
Uh-huh.
lately. But when you write them, do you feel like do you wonder how they'll be received 10 years, 20 years, 100 years from now? Are you trying to say something that requires us to know what the current moment is, or how do you navigate that?
Well, I think if in 100 years anyone is reading anything I wrote, that to me would be very funny, actually. But if somehow that happened and they ran into this poem, I think they would be looking at poetry from a historical perspective. They'd be looking at
Fair.
the
Yeah.
history of Tim Seibles' work, and they'd say, "Oh, this poem was written in the mid 2020s. Isn't that the time when Trump was in his second
Yeah.
term? And I think so they would get the framework pretty quickly, I think. Now, if someone read it and had no idea about any of what we are feeling today, I think the poem would just feel like some kind of horror poem. Like
Hmm.
something's happening and people want to hurt and or eat other people or infect other people or something, but it wouldn't have the resonance that I would hope for in the time that I'm living in. When I'm writing, generally, whether it's political or not political or mystical or crazy funny or whatever it is, I'm really writing for the people I live with. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not really writing for the future. It would be great. I mean, I think any artist of any kind, if someone 100 years is they're still thinking about what I was trying to say, that of course that'd be great. But I can't write for the future. I'm just writing what I sense and feel right now, and I think if I do that well, there's a chance someone may care about what I do in 50 years. There's a chance, but I'm certainly not counting on it.
I really love hearing that. Like, I'll tell you the truth. Like, I've had one of those jobs where you read poems and then put it in context for other people, and that's really changed my perspective on how I read poetry because now I do think, hey, of course they're going to read my work 100 years from now. Why not? And if there's something I want to say, I don't have to absolutely force it all into the poem because, theoretically, there will be history books and whatever, and there will be some academic who can look up this is probably a reference to that. So I know it can be filled in. I mean, come on, we're still reading poems. Like we're still reading Zimborska, who has poems. There's all kinds of poems written about World War I and World War II, and we read about them and we know what the references are.
Right.
So I don't know, Tim. I think people are going to be reading your work 100 years from now.
Well, you're very kind. Yeah, you're very kind. But you hope that you give them some context because I do make reference to November and
Yeah,
who voted for whom. And so
yeah,
anyone reading will know it has something to do with an election and something scary happened in this election. I think they'll get that
yeah.
much. And then if people want to research the time in which this poem was written, then they'll have a clear sense of what was being referenced.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, I don't worry too much about that. Like it was also someone was asking me about the cartoon poems. Like I read that Popeye poem. Now,
Yeah, yes.
someone who's my age most likely watched Popeye cartoons when they were a child. But
Hmm.
someone who's 20 years old, I think Popeye would mean far less to them. I mean, there's no way a 20-year-old now who grew up on what was it, the Teletubbies
Yeah,
or or Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, they may have known the tiniest amount about Popeye. That poem wouldn't necessarily have much resonance for them.
yeah.
But that's the nature of being human. I mean, I was born in 1955, I mean, there's a framework that I have that simply isn't going to be part of someone who's born in 1985. It's just not going to be part of their lives, you know? And so, but, and in that respect, I think all of us as authors, all of us who write, you, me, and you name whomever, we're all trying to document our time.
Yes.
That's really what
Yeah.
we're doing. I can't document the time for someone who was born in 1985. They may know some of the stuff I'm referring to in some poems, but ultimately, my lifespan is really the context in which I'm drawing a lot of information and what I feel, what I think is possible. My idealism about human beings' potential is certainly rooted in I Have a Dream by Dr. King. Of course
Yeah.
it is, or in Gandhi's vision. I mean, of course, those are the things that shape the way I imagine human possibility. I mean, I am an idealist. The 60s were this time when people were going to change the world. I mean, those are my roots. So how can I not be that?
I have to comment, you're so ebullient and you seem to just have this joy about your poetry and music and life. And you're calling yourself an idealist. Like with everything going on, how do you maintain that, Tim? Like,
Well, it's not that I don't have moments and hours and perhaps days of great despair. I mean,
okay,
don't get me wrong. I I agonize sometimes about
yeah,
what human beings have allowed to happen on Earth, not only in America, but you name it, Sudan, Israel. I mean, you name it. I mean, there's some reasons to just pound your head on the wall. There's no question about it. But
yeah,
ultimately, I think my sense of I can't call myself optimistic. That might be just too strong a term, but that I have a creeping faith in human
mm,
beings. You know, I think that's rooted, of
yeah,
course, again, in the time, my teenage years as a kid, thinking about the Black Arts movement, the hippie movement. I think it's rooted in that. Also, my mom had the energy very similar to mine. If I'm honest, I think this is partly a genetic
yep,
inheritance.
yeah,
And so there's that. But no, I have days when it's all I can do not to just get in a car, drive into the wilderness, and just build a tent, never to be heard from again. I mean, some days I just think, you know what? People are stupid. People don't
yep,
think, they don't read. You know, I'm just not doing this anymore. Of course, I have those moments. But ultimately, there have always been, even in the worst circumstances, amazing human beings that do
yes,
amazing things. So you think you must persist. My
yeah,
father used to say, you must have iron in your soul. That's what he would.
mm,
You must have iron in your soul. So I'm trying to have iron in my soul and persist in my belief in human potential, even when it appears to be naive, to feel that way.
yeah. Well, I mean, I tend to be more like that too, and I could say it's maybe genetic because my dad's a very positive person. We might even say toxically positive sometimes. But it's still positive and I think I'm always wondering if that's something genetically you inherit or just because it's something you're raised with. It's kind of built in there. It's one of those things that even a psych degree really hasn't fully answered yet. But I just got to tell you, I have the same fantasy too, except I'm usually off into the woods, but I'm bringing like 100 poets that I know with me, and we create like this big RV camp with corn growing in the background and chickens and a farm, and we're just,
Yeah.
living off the grid, but together in a community. So,
Yeah,
if I
that's
build that,
that's a better fantasy. I got close to something like that just recently. Have you ever heard of the Great Mother Conference? Do you know this?
no, no.
Anyway, I didn't know about it either. And so I got a call, I guess it was probably February. It said,
Mhm.
"Hey, would you come and read at the Great Mother Conference?" And I thought, I love to read. I'll usually say yes. If someone can get me somewhere and give me a few dollars, I'm of course thrilled to read poems. Truthfully, I would read for free in many occasions too. I just love to read poems. But it was the Great Mother Conference in Jefferson, Maine. It takes place every every late May, I think,
Mhm.
is the dates. And you go up there, and the poets and other artists are in cabins. They all have cabins. And there are a lot of people who come and live in tents on the ground. It's at a campground, it's at this big campground. And so people living in tents, some people living in cabins, some people who live in Jefferson probably live in their homes, of course. But
Mhm.
you have poets, painters, photographers, musicians, massage therapists. I mean, everybody's just there for a week. You just hang out for a week. I gave a reading. I taught a couple of workshops. I lived with another poet who gave a reading and taught workshops. I mean, you have all these, it's all you're surrounded by are these people who think, hey man, art is really where it's at. And so
Yeah.
you're in this ideal place. It was founded, by the way, by Robert Bly. The
Oh,
conference was
wow. Okay.
founded by
Okay.
Bly.
I
Uh,
know
it
this
was
guy.
it was founded in the mid 70s, so it has gone on since then. And so, but that is very much like the utopian, the miniature utopia you were describing, going
I
into the
know.
woods with 100 posts. But these were artists of all kinds. It was just wonderful, you know. And when you leave there, you think, oh man. I'm not sure I want to go back to the regular world. I just don't want to go back. I just want to be with these people, many of whom would have been hippies. They're old,
Oh, yeah.
several people older than me by a good ways. And, but, so there was this sensibility that I remember from that era. And it was just really made you think, oh man, why can't the world feel like this?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it can, even if for brief amounts of time. That's certainly how I feel when I go to poetry retreats and conferences and things. And it's just always poetry, Sometimes there's lots of places where you can go and feel uplifted. Sometimes just hang in my hammock out in the woods near our townhouse, like just getting my 1 hour of peace away from it all, and I come back a little more refreshed.
Yeah, yeah, all the
Tim,
way.
before I let you go, I got to ask a question totally unrelated to poetry. I am fascinated by this image behind your head.
Oh, this right here. Let's move it. Let's get it
That.
in there. It's funny that you'd ask about that. I have no idea who the artist is. There's no signature on it anywhere. I was in I guess it was a kind of a thrift shop, I guess, years ago. And this was on the wall for sale for like $25. And I thought,
Mm,
I think this is just fantastic. So
yeah.
so I picked it up. And but again, there's no name on it, not on the back, not on the front. It's just this, and it's a painting. I mean,
Yeah.
someone painted it. It's not a photo. It's a painting. But I cannot find the name anywhere. But I figured I like it. So whoever it is, may the good spirits find them. But That's all I can tell you about it. I just saw it and I liked it, so I bought it. And it was, as I
It,
said, really inexpensive. I mean, it's just crazy.
no, it's beautiful. It's cosmic. It's got all this. Why makes me think of water and the womb and
Yeah, yeah,
inside of
yeah, yeah, yeah,
nature.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. This is kind of random, but definitely on the topic. I did some research on the concept of originality, which I realize feels very academic way of delving into something that should be more organic. But prior to I think the Renaissance era, most artists didn't sign their work, because you weren't really
Is that
supposed to
true?
take
Really?
credit.
Wow.
I mean, this is what I've read.
Okay.
So but yeah, the idea was that you weren't supposed to sign your work because this was supposed to be like something that God did through you, and you
Oh, I
really weren't
see.
supposed to take credit.
I see. I see. I did not know that.
Yeah. And
I
then in
just,
the Renaissance, it became very commercial. It was like competitive and which very wealthy patron was going to pay you for
oh,
your art. And so that's when people
yeah.
started really, but I
Okay.
still like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
This, as I said, as far as I can tell, maybe it was done during the Renaissance and it's actually worth millions. Who knows? I don't know.
well, it's gorgeous, and
Yeah,
I'm
thank you. I think
glad
it's cool too.
it came to you, however it came to you.
Yeah.
Um, the rain just started outside, and I'm pretty sure pretty soon we're gonna get a lot of lightning and
Some
thunder
lightning.
because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
summer in the south. But Tim, this has been such a pleasure, and you're not that far from me, so I really hope I'm gonna get to hear you read live
Oh
in person.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I hope to see you again, of course. And it's Trish, right?
It's tree. I just tell people to call me tree, like the plant. I'm a
Oh,
nature
tree.
poet and I'm tall. I'm tall like a tree.
So
Should
you
have
go
been my
by
name the whole
tree.
time. Yeah.
Okay, because yesterday you might when I was before we got cut off at the end of the Zoom, I said Tresh, and I thought that's a strange name, but that's what it looked like, Tresh. I thought, okay, Tresh, all right, but
Yeah.
you would prefer tree, period.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Okay, all right.
the way that it's spelled out, it should be Tresha, but my parents pronounce it Tresha, and I've
Oh,
always
tree.
wondered. They're like,
So
it was,
Trish, Trish.
yeah,
Okay, 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 okay. Got
yeah.
it, got it, got
So,
it.
but yeah,
Okay,
I found it's just easier to go by tree, and it works for me.
okay.
So
Tree is cool. It's a great name. I love that name. I love
I'm gonna get
trees.
it
I love
legally
trees.
changed.
I love trees. Yeah, yeah. I wrote a nature poem. I mean, I've written a few, but this one that ends with the image of a tree. So I'm all for trees. I'm a big
Yeah.
fan.
You know what? I can't let you go before I make a reading recommendation, if I may, for you.
Sure,
I don't know
absolutely. I try not to be in the dark all the time.
if well, my former co-host, still one of my poetry friends, Douglas Manuel, fabulous poet. His first book is Testify from Red Hen Press, and I think the second book is also from Red Hen. It's called Trouble Funk,
Huh.
and
Great
he's
title. Great title.
he's telling the story of two characters based on his mother and father and how they met through music in I want to say six. Let's say somewhere in the 60s and 70s. I think it's the
Okay.
70s,
Okay.
but I could be wrong. It could be going back farther. But definitely I could see you enjoying his work, and
Trouble
I have
Funk. Great title.
Trouble Funk.
Yeah, Trouble Funk.
I am not nearly as musically tuned in as Doug is or anyone else, but I know I know so many people who are musicians and they're friends with me and they're always introducing me to new work. So I'm grateful. I'm
Oh
grateful for
yeah.
my
Oh
educators
yeah,
that
yeah.
way.
No, we're all grateful for people who introduce us to stuff because there's too much to discover on your own. There's too
Oh, I
much. It's
know.
too much. Someone has to give you a nudge in one direction or another. It's too much.
Right. Well, this is my ideal of that community where it's just a small like group of 100 artists in one place is that we'd all know each other's work,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
maybe
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a really cool idea. I like it a
you
lot.
can shrink the world down to like a size that fits.
Oh yeah. Well, that's why I
Yeah.
think tribal societies, I'm sure they had their own problems, believe me. But I think because if you're in a tribe, so
Hmm.
many things you'd have in common, there
Yeah.
wouldn't be that sense that you were ever dealing with a stranger?
Yeah.
And so that might have been one of the ideal things about tribal life, wherever it was. But of course, now we have these mega cities and nation states of like hundreds of millions
Mhm.
of people. So it's a different experience. I wonder whether or not we may find our way back to smaller enclaves or something, because it does seem like we can be pretty cold to
Yeah.
strangers. Anyway, yeah.
No, I mean that's we could
Yeah.
do a whole other podcast on that topic. I think
Right,
about that a
right.
lot.
Yeah.
Uh, I think what's happening, at least like in the artistic communities, like I've got my artistic tribe. I maybe see them mainly on Zoom, but I got them. And that does give me this sense of being part of like a community where everyone knows everyone.
Oh, I agree with you. I'm with you all the way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
then I go
that's a
out
good.
and like go to the grocery store and it's someone I've never met and will never see again that I'm interacting with. So it's we're balancing it out. We're
Yeah,
balancing it
yeah,
out. But
yeah. Oh, yeah. Being a stranger is weird. It is weird, it's. I prefer the idea of being connected to people rather than just
yeah,
being like a customer. You
yeah,
know? So, you know what I mean? It's a.
yeah. Well, I hope I'll get a run into you in small town poetry again.
I hope so too, and maybe I'll run into you on if you do more readings like the one Cornelius and I did. Maybe I could join as an audience member. That would be cool.
You are always welcome.
All
You
right.
are always welcome. Well, thank you, Tim, and
Thanks, Jane.
have a great rest of your day, your summer, everything.
Yeah,
And
you too. You too. You
I will
too.
see you at some point when the universe clashes us back together again.
I cannot wait for the reunion.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your
It was
day.
great. You too. And thanks for spending the time and thinking about poetry and caring about what I think or do. Believe me, I'm sure most people would feel their lives would be better without any of my thoughts. Let me.
Stop that. I am better for your thoughts. Thank you
Well,
for
thank
sharing your
you. I
thoughts
am
with me.
better for yours. Thank you.
Take care. Have a good one.
So long.